Education Organizational Meeting of Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, called to order at 5:30 p.m. Any individual wishing to address the Board of Education during this evening's meeting should complete a comment card and provide it to Mrs. Abear. Mrs. Abear, would you please take roll?
Mrs. Bauer Perry.
Here.
Mrs. Berry.
Here.
Mrs. Burton Kelsey.
Here.
Mr. Harris. Mrs. Lowry.
Here.
Mrs. Paget.
Here.
Mrs. Saunders.
Here.
Mr. Greathead.
Here. Thank you, Mel. Item B, Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Next item on the agenda is the administration of the oath of office. Before Mrs. Bauer Perry, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Lowry, and Mrs. Sanders can begin their official duties as board members in their new terms of office, we need to administer the oath of office to them. Mrs. Bauer Perry, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Lowry, and Mrs. Sanders, would you please stand? Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of the state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
faithfully discharge the duties
of office of member of the Board of Education
of office of member of the Board of Education
of the Woodhaven-Brownstown School District,
of the Woodhaven-Brownstown School District,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Item D on the agenda is approval of the agenda. The suggested motion is to approve the agenda as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as recommended.
I'll second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey, seconded by Barry. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item number 2 is election of officers. Through the process called for in the board operating procedures approved by the Board of Education on November 15th, 2022, I solicited nominations for board officer positions. For the office of president, we have a nomination for board president for Mrs. Paget. Mrs. Paget, do you accept this nomination?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for board president at this time? Hearing none, the suggested motion is to elect Mrs. Paget as board president as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to elect Jen Paget as 2023 president for the WBSD School Board.
Second.
And second by Barry. Motion by Burton Kelsey, supported by Barry. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of electing Jen, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Jen.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next is the office of vice president. We have a nomination for board vice president for Mrs. Burton Kelsey. Mrs. Burton Kelsey, do you accept this nomination?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations at this time? Hearing none, the suggested motion is to elect Mrs. Burton Kelsey as vice president as recommended, or as presented, sorry. I'll entertain a motion. Thank you.
Motion to elect Mickey Burton Kelsey as 2023 Vice President of the WBSD Board of Education.
I'll second.
Motion by Barry, second by Paget. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of electing Mrs. Burton Kelsey as vice president of the Board of Education, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Mickey.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next up is secretary. We have a nomination for board secretary for Mrs. Sanders. Mrs. Sanders, do you accept this nomination?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations at this time? Hearing none, the suggested motion is to elect Mrs. Sanders as secretary for the Board of Education as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to elect Carrie Sanders as 2023 Secretary of the WBSD Board of Education.
Is there support?
Support. Second.
Okay, motion by Barry, supported by Paget. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of electing Mrs. Sanders as secretary of the Board of Education, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Carrie.
Thank you.
Next is treasurer. We have a nomination for board treasurer for Mrs. Berry. Mrs. Berry, do you accept this nomination?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? None? Well, okay.
Just trying to get rid of me.
The suggested motion is to elect Mrs. Berry as treasurer for the Board of Education as presented. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to elect Laura Berry as 2023 treasurer of the WBSD Board of Education.
Thank you. Is there
I'll
support?
second. Yep. Second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey, support by Paget. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of electing Mrs. Berry as treasurer of the Board of Education, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Laura.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bauer Perry, Mr. Harris, and Mrs. Lowry will serve as trustees of the Board of Education. Thank you, everybody, for your service and for your participation in that process. Item number 3 is adoption of the 2023-24 Board of Education meeting schedule. The board was previously provided with a copy of the 2023-24 Board of Education meeting schedule. At this time, is there any discussion regarding the proposed schedule of Board of Education meetings for the 2023-24 school year? The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the schedule of Board of Education meetings representing regular board meeting dates for July 2023 through June of 2024 as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
You can make the motion to approve the 2023-2024 school year Board of Education meeting schedule as you've recommended.
Second.
Motion by Paget, supported by Barry. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the 2023-2024 Board of Education meeting schedule as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 4 is adoption of resolutions and approvals for services. The first being designation of person for posting public notices of meetings. The suggested motion is to adopt the resolution designating Mrs. Melanie Hebert as the person responsible for posting public notices of meetings for the 2023 calendar year as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the designation of Mrs. Melanie Hebert as the individual responsible for posting public notices of meetings for the 2023 calendar year as recommended.
Second.
Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the resolution as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item B is approval of authorization of the superintendent and the treasurer of the Board of Education to sign all Woodhaven-Brownstown School District checks. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education authorize Mark Greathead as superintendent of schools and Mrs. Laura Berry as treasurer of the Board of Education to sign all Woodhaven-Brownstown School District checks for the 2023 calendar year as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to authorize Mark Greathead as superintendent of schools and Miss Laura Berry as treasurer of the Board of Education to sign all WBSD checks for the 2023 school year as you've recommended.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Paget, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of authorizing Mark Greathead as superintendent of schools and Mrs. Laura Berry as treasurer of the Board of Education to sign all Woodhaven-Brownstown School District checks for the 2023 calendar year as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item C is adoption of resolution regarding the designation of attorney firms for evaluations, legal matters, labor relations, policies, and bonding purposes. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education adopt the resolution designating the following firms for representation regarding evaluations, legal matters, labor relations, policies, and bonding purposes for the 2023 calendar year as presented: Collins and Blaha, Foley and Robinette, Miller Johnson, Seacrest, Wardle, Lynch, Hampton, Truex, and Morley, and the Troon Law Firm. I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to adopt the resolution designating legal firms for the representation regarding evaluations, legal matters, labor relations, policies, and bonding purposes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey, supported by Barry. Any discussion? Hearing none, hearing none, all in favor of adopting the resolution designating the suggested firms for representation regarding evaluations, legal matter, labor relations, policies, and bonding purpose for the 2023 calendar year as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item D is adoption of resolution regarding the designation of the following financial institutions. The suggested motions that the Board of Education adopt the resolution designating the following financial institutions for the 2023 calendar year as presented. They are BMO Harris Bank, N.A., Comerica Bank, Comerica Securities, and Huntington Bank. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution designating the financial institutions as presented.
Second.
Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the resolution designating the suggested financial institutions for the 2023 calendar year as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries, and that concludes the organizational meeting of the Board of Education. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the meeting over to Jen.
Thank you very much. You had all the mouthful, so appreciate that. Item number 5 is hearing of the public. The Board of Education believes it's crucial to hear from our community on matters most important to them, and therefore we do provide 2 opportunities to address the board at its meetings. The first opportunity is now for items that are listed on the agenda, and the second opportunity is later in the meeting, and it is reserved for items that are not on the agenda. In both cases, the individual time limit is 5 minutes. And it's important to note that while the board takes all questions and concerns from the public seriously, an immediate response should not be expected as we request time to process and research issues. But please know that district staff will always reply to you when necessary in an appropriate time frame. So again, any individual wishing to address the Board of Education during either session should complete a comment card and provide it to Mrs. Hebert. Mrs. Hebert, do we have any at this time? Okay, thank you. Item number 6 is the consent agenda. The suggested motion is to approve the consent agenda as recommended. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as recommended.
Second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey. Was that supported by Barry?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all of in favor of approving the consent agenda as recommended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 is back to you, Mark.
Thank you for that break. Item number 7, personnel recommendations. We have personnel recommendations this evening in the areas of professional staff, support staff, and Schedule B. For professional staff, the suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the following professional staff employments en masse, both effective January 18th, 2023 as presented. They are Bailey Buchanan, tote occupational therapist, and Kelly McCowan, tote speech and language pathologist. I'm sorry, did I say tote occupational therapist? Correct? Yes, all right, thank you.
Sorry, suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the professional. Yep, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the professional staff recommendations en masse as presented.
Second.
Motion by Barry, supported by Sanders.
Yep.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the professional staff employments as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Roberts or?
I will turn it over to Mr. Salah to introduce the staff.
Thank you. I want to big congratulations to our 2 new professional staff members, Bailey and Kelly. As an update on our programming in tote, we are very fortunate that our program continues growing, and this has allowed us to bring on more professional staff to support our families. Bailey Buchanan is here today. Bailey, if you could stand up.
Welcome.
Aye. Welcome.
Miss Buchanan is a licensed OT. She graduated from Eastern Michigan University with a Bachelor's of Science and Master's in Occupational Therapy. And for the last 2 years, she has served at Garden City Hospital for occupational therapy. Her mentor is also here, Dr. Vanessa Montgomery, and they will be working together in the TOTE program.
Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Also here with us is Kelly McCowan. Kelly is joining us as a speech and language pathologist. She has earned her Bachelor's of Science in Communication Disorders from Central Michigan University and her MA in Speech and Language Pathology from Eastern Michigan University. For the past 7 years, she worked for 3 different therapy centers, most recently the Beaumont Center for Exceptional Families in Dearborn, and just could not wait to get into schools and work with families in that capacity. Her mentor is also here, Miss Emily Church, and they will be working on the speech and language pathology in our TOEP program.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I gotta say it.
Got 2 of us now. Three.
Oh.
Three.
Yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
I only acknowledge green though.
Next will be our support staff recommendations. Suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the following support staff employments en masse, all effective January 18th, 2023 as presented. They are Stephanie Boda, Bates Elementary School Special Services Paraprofessional, Melissa Johns, Waginka Elementary School Special Services Paraprofessional, and Julie Rama, Gudith Elementary School Special Services Paraprofessional.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the support staff recommendations en masse as presented.
Second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey, supported by Barry. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the support staff employments as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Roberts?
All 3 paraprofessionals are with us this evening. And as well as I'd like to give a special thanks to Mrs. Kim Tackett, the paraprofessional union president, who is instrumental in our hiring and onboarding our staff. But Mrs. Boda is here this evening. Mrs. Boda has worked within WBSD since 2012 as a substitute teacher, most recently through EduStaff. For the past 3 years, she has been a building substitute at Irving Elementary. She has an associate's degree in science photography and an additional 90 credits from the University of Phoenix. And in speaking with her, she's excited to take another step forward in education and felt like this was a good step for her to get more into education. So we're excited to have her join us. Melissa Johns is here. Ms. Johns has 13 years of educational experience, mostly as a teacher assistant. Her work has spanned multiple states, including Michigan, Colorado, and most recently Tennessee, where she was an assistant and lead preschool teacher for the Goddard School of Mount Juliet. And Julie Rama is here. Mrs. Rama spent the last 5 years as a paraprofessional for Gibraltar School District before leaving this past October. She has an associate's degree from Wayne County Community College in General Studies and another one in Applied Sciences.
And our next set of recommendations is Schedule B. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the following Schedule B employments en masse as presented. Mary Banks, thank you. Varsity sideline cheer head coach, effective 12/15/22. Ryan Carlson, JV boys golf coach, effective January 18th, 2023. Gary DeBacker, JV boys and girls bowling coach, effective January 18th, 2023. And Jillian O'Connell, JV dance coach, effective January 18th, 2023.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the Schedule B recommendations en masse as presented.
Second.
Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the Schedule B employments as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Roberts?
So one of the neat things about it is that about our contract and our Schedule Bs is that we provide a position within our program. And so if we have a certain number of kids, we can have a $500 stipend coach to support the needs. And that is kind of a transition year to see if we need an assistant coach. And that's kind of what we've been able to do here, that these coaches that we're bringing on tonight were often $500 stipend coaches in the past, but we've had such large programs that we're now bringing on them as full-time coaches in our program. So Mr. Carlson is here with us tonight, along with our head golf coach, Mr. Vic Bliss. And Mr. Carlson has over 13 years of coaching experience with various sports, including tennis and golf. He was a stipend coach for the 2022 boys season when the team had over 28 golfers. and with the support of Mr. Bliss, together to build a very large and successful golf program. So excited. Our other three coaches this evening are either at competitions or at practice working because they were stipend coaches ahead of time. So they
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you to the mentors for being here also. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to welcome everybody that came this evening. We appreciate not only you being here, but we look forward to the many positive contributions that you'll make to the students of the Woodhaven-Brownstown School District. So thank you very much. Moving on to new business. The first order is the 2022-23 first budget amendment and adoption of resolutions for the general fund grants, food service fund, sinking fund, and special revenue fund. At this time, I invite Mr. Smith to the podium there to present to the Board of Education the first amendment to the 2022-23 school year budget.
Good evening and welcome to our newest board members tonight. I'm excited to present to you all the first budget amendment for the 22-23 school year. So let's get started. I like to start with a budget timeline. The yellow star indicates where we are tonight on this budget timeline. The information we are looking at this evening has been reviewed by the Finance Committee back at the subcommittee meeting in December. The main objective of tonight's presentation is to have the Board of Education review the budget amendment and to have an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions before taking action and adopting the budget. So let's talk about the budget impacts. The significant factors that are impacting revenue in this budget amendment are a decrease in enrollment from what we had projected back in June, a reduction in the Wayne County enhancement millage, which we also knew about back in June when we did the projected budget, an increase in per pupil funding of $450. We had budgeted in June an increase of $425 per student, so that was an increase of $25. And then increased funding or general fund reimbursement for special education expenses. Regarding expenditures, there were 4 budget requests that have been included in this budget should it be approved. These requests include a new position for a communications liaison, the addition of club lacrosse team, change of a position from a 10.5 month to a 12-month employee for the special services admin assistant, and an additional school resource officer that would be housed at Brownstown Middle School. So for revenues, other local revenues are up $100,000. That's primarily due to an increase in interest income. As you know, we've had this rising rate environment, and we've really seen that reflected in our investments that the district has. The biggest change comes from our state funding. However, the increase of nearly $1.2 million is the result of netting together the decrease in state aid due to enrollment and the increase in the general fund reimbursement of the special ed expenditures. So that totals around $1.2 million. The $200,000 in grant revenue is a result of capturing the indirect costs for the federal grants, which usually comes, we do that annually after the final expenditure reports are updated. That's usually in November, December of each year. So that is included in this amendment. So the total revenues are projected to be $62.2 million. For expenditures, I expect an increase of while I'm expecting an increase of $1.4 million in revenue, I anticipate a much smaller increase in the expenditures, around $93,500. Salaries and benefits will increase approximately $200,000, as you can see there. The decrease in purchase services of $172,000 is the result of contractual obligations coming in less than expected, plus the opportunity to move some of our curricular expenditures to some COVID grant funding. And finally, the increase of $46,000 in capital outlay is primarily due to one-time funding for temporary band uniforms and band shell lighting. If you remember, this year our band had 35 more members. They usually run around 90 to 100. They had 135 member band this year. So we had to do kind of an emergency purchase of some temporary uniforms for them. I do want to note that after the finalization of this budget amendment, Mr. Satterfield and myself were able to review the increased funding that's coming in for 31A at-risk dollars. And we were able to move or reallocate salaries and benefits of the secondary school social workers a psychologist, EL teacher, and all 10 of our counselors reallocate some of their salaries and benefits from the general fund into the 31A at-risk funding. So that actually has a positive impact to our general fund of over $500,000. The influx of 31A funding this year was around 750,000. So we were able to kind of right the ship. We have our elementary social workers, a percentage of their salaries and benefits have always been covered by at-risk, and none of our secondary schools, just due to the amount of funding that we had. So with this additional funding, we were able to
Is
reallocate
that
some of those.
reflected, Mr. Smith, is that reflected in this budget amendment?
It is.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is not. It will be, this budget amendment was finalized in the 1st of December, and it was December 20th state aid when Mr. Satterfield and I were able to review that and reallocate those funds. So it'll be recognized in the final budget amendment in June. So this slide provides a snapshot of the amended budget and what I'm requesting to be approved this evening. The audited fund balance of $15.2 million, adjusted for the 2023 anticipated revenues of $62.2 million, less the anticipated expenditures of $63.3 million, leaves a revised fund balance of $14,151,000, which is 22.33%. We are in spend down mode for our fund balance. This budget reflects a spend down of nearly $1.1 million, which is inclusive of the set asides. Furthermore, I do not anticipate that the fund balance will really be negatively impacted by that full amount because of the reallocation of the salaries and benefits of some of our staff to the tune of $500,000. Next, we are going to talk about grant revenues. So the revenues increased 37%. State restricted funds and federal grants are expected to total $8.67 million. $1 million of that in the state funds increase is primarily due to the additional at-risk funding. And then the $1.3 million in federal grant funds is inclusion of the ESSER III dollars. Grant expenditures must be budgeted to match grant revenues, so they always net to zero. As of this time, over $7.5 million of grant expenditures relates to salaries and benefits, so they're staying in the classroom. Included in these salary and benefits is the addition of the interventionists that we added this year, and a percentage of the counselors. All 10 of the counselors are 25% of their salaries are now funded through at-risk dollars. An increase purchase services to account for iReady and other software licenses, which will aid in the instruction and assessment of our students. And note the allocation of the ESSER III funds is the primary driver for the large increases. We expended only $42,000 of our ESSER III funds last year, and that was done intentionally as our primary focus was the appropriate and accurate spend down of ESSER II dollars, which was $2.9 million and has been fully spent. And finally, for non-major funds, I project that we will spend down some of the cafe balance. This is due to the district being free breakfast and lunch. The district actually receives a lower reimbursement rate when we are not, free for the whole district. While we're spending down some of the fund balance, I still believe that the cafe account will finish with a fund balance of over $1 million. The sinking fund is anticipated to grow approximately $300,000 this year, and we will continue to utilize these funds as appropriate and where allowed to offset any of our capital projects going on within the district. That includes bond work. We've looked at, funding, other funding sources. If any bond projects were to come to the budget, if, we can run into with rising costs. We also set aside another $605,000 in the internal set-asides, which are earmarked for band uniforms, bus purchases, and technology. However, are not restricted to those three items. We are just setting those aside for projects that, as the board sees fit. And special revenue funds, you may hear some of the secretaries refer to these as club accounts. We should finish with a fund balance of around $300,000. So that is the National Honor Society. I think, Mickey, you had asked one time, student council, those types of accounts. So with that, I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
I have a quick question. I know the answer to this, but I think people would probably were surprised to hear that we had a decrease in student numbers that caused that change. Could you explain just briefly why we had a decrease?
Yeah, part of that decrease was due to the TOTE program and how the FTE was allocated. So with the decrease in the TOTE program allocation, that is 100% reimbursable, so it doesn't have an impact on our dollar bottom line. But we projected in June, we always project flat enrollment. And with the during COVID, they went to a different way to calculate student enrollment or population. And so we're now seeing that being kind of right-sized. And so it was budgeting flat enrollment and then with the decrease in the fall enrollment.
We didn't really have a decrease in enrollment, just where the money came from for those
Correct.
students has changed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Negligible. I mean, yeah, it'd be small number of students, but once it gets blended out, certainly not of the magnitude of 70.
Not
though.
70?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, I spent 45 minutes on the phone with Josh today, walking me through some of this, so I appreciate your time. I said it's just going to be a 5-minute phone call, and it was not. So thank you for your time
Yeah,
to help me
for sure.
be confident today. Thanks.
All right, if there are no other questions for Mr. Smith, the suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the first budget amendment for the 2022-23 school year budget as presented.
Motion to approve the 2022-2023 first budget amendment and resolution as presented.
Second.
Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Any additional discussion?
I just wanted to mention that our previous year finance committee did review this all with Mr. Smith in December.
Wonderful. Okay. If there's nothing else, all in favor of approving the budget amendment for the 2022-2023 school year as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Smith.
Item number 2 is bid pack number 5, our Woodhaven High School recommendation. Bid pack number 5 is renovations and additions to Woodhaven High School in preparation for the addition of 9th grade as part of a comprehensive high school program at Woodhaven High School in the 2024-25 school year. Work with the staff of Woodhaven High School and the bond team has been ongoing for over 1.5 years now. The highlights of bid pack number 5 include a new graphic arts lab, new band and choir rooms, the relocation of our counseling suite, and interior renovations and changes for the needed additional classrooms. The total budget allocation for bid pack number 5 was $25,976,630. Construction documents were formally issued and made available on November 18th, 2022. Sealed bids were received and publicly opened on December 14th, 2022. Through the diligence of the bond team, we're pleased to recommend a total project award recommendation of $24,729,065, which is $1,247,565 under budget. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve bid pack number 5 and a total project award recommendation of $24,729,065 as presented.
Entertain a motion.
Wants to say that number. Okay, motion to approve bid pack number 5, total project award recommendation of $24,729,065 as presented.
Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Sorry, my mic's not on. Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Just that, I mean, we had a bond meeting last month, right, to talk about this. We know there's a lot of parking lot items. There's still a long lead time, lots of bond work ahead of us, but this is pretty exciting, so.
Yeah, excited to get this process started.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Hearing nothing else, all in favor of approving bid pack 5 as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Doug, for
Thank
being here.
you.
Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher, as well. Item number 3 is our technology recommendation. These are bond-related. This is a bond package technology recommendation. As part of our cyclical technology updates, we are recommending the purchase of new Brownstown Middle School and Patrick Henry Middle School student Chromebooks, high school computer-aided CAD computers, staff desktop computers and monitors, and administrative laptops. We are also recommending an extension of the cabling and security contractors for this year's projects. The total technology project award is $1,791,212.57. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the technology update recommendations in a total project award amount of $1,791,212.57 as recommended.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Go ahead, Laura, you're good. Motion to approve the technology total project award recommendation of $1,791,212.57 as presented.
Support.
Motion by Barry, supported by Burton Kelsey. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the technology update recommendation as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay, for your work on that recommendation. Item number 4 is the adoption of resolution calling for special election for May 2nd, 2023 for non-homestead operating millage renewal. All school districts in the state of Michigan, in order to collect the full guaranteed foundation allowance per pupil, are required to levy 18 mills of operating tax on all property in the school district with the exception of principal residences, which would be homeowners, and other property exempted by law. Again, this is required to levy 18 mills of operating tax on all properties with the exception of principal residences and other property exempted by law. The voters in the Woodhaven-Brownstown School District last approved the non-homestead operating millage in 2015. We are set to now renew our non-homestead operating millage renewal before its current expiration, and if we are to do so, it will have to be done via a special election on May 2nd, 2023. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education adopt the resolution calling for a special election for May 2nd, 2023 for non-homestead operating millage renewal as presented.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the resolution calling for a special election for May 2nd, 2023 for non-homestead operating millage renewal as presented.
Second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey, supported by Barry. Any discussion?
Just want to make sure that the board understands that May 2nd, 2023 was an otherwise scheduled day of school for students in the Woodhaven-Brownstown School District. It would be part and parcel with this recommendation as part of our approach to safety and security for our students that we not have school for students on that day and that we begin communicating that to families so that they may prepare appropriately.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Hearing nothing else, all in favor of approving the resolution calling for a special election for May 2nd for non-homestead operating millage renewal as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 5 is overnight and out-of-state trip proposals. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the following overnight and out-of-state trip proposals en masse as recommended. All appropriate and required paperwork will be completed prior to each trip, including chaperone agreements and background checks where required. They are the Bates Elementary School 5th grade camp to the Howell Nature Center, Irving Elementary School 5th grade camp to Battle Creek Outdoor Education Center, Gudith Elementary School 5th grade camp to the Howell Nature Center, Waginka Elementary School 5th grade camp to the Battle Creek Outdoor Education Center, Yake Elementary School 5th grade camp, Camp Machindo, the Yake Elementary School 5th grade safety patrol, Toledo Mud Hens game, Brownstown Middle School Cedar Point trip, the Patrick Henry Middle School 2023 spring recess trip to Chicago, Illinois, the DECA State Conference to be held in Detroit, Michigan, the DECA International Conference to be held in Orlando, Florida, the HOSA State Conference, Grand Traverse Resort, the robotics competition at St. Joseph High School, the robotics state competition at Saginaw Valley State University, the robotics world competition to be held in Houston, Texas, the Woodhaven High School Student Council 2023 Student Leadership State Conference in Grand Rapids, the Yeti Ski Club weekend trip at Crystal Mountain, Michigan. The Michigan High School Athletic Association's Boys Swim and Dive Team State Championships at the Holland Aquatic Center, and the Michigan High School Athletic Association's Wrestling State Championships at Ford Field.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the overnight and out-of-state trip proposals en masse as presented.
Second.
Motion by Burton Kelsey, supported by Barry. Any discussion?
Mark, I just have a question, and I don't expect you to answer it now, but it would be helpful to me to know which of these we support funding and transportation. Some of them I don't think we do. Just in the future, maybe. Or if you want to answer them all right now, go ahead.
Well, Mrs. Burton Kelsey, you didn't make the motion by repeating all of them, so,
It says as presented.
yeah, we'll follow up.
Okay, thanks.
And there's so many because we moved to doing this, right? Like,
Yeah, it's not like we were asleep at the wheel. We instead of doing this at every board
Board
meeting,
meeting.
we try to do it 3 times throughout the course of the school year, and this would be that winter recommendation.
wonderful. Thank you. If there's no additional discussion, all in favor of approving the overnight out-of-state trip proposals as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just a little bit of Bruce Burke.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is Superintendent's Report. Yesterday was a day of learning in the Woodhaven-Brownstown School District for our staff members. Huge thanks and acknowledgement go to Joshua Satterfield and Phil Short for their work in leading and organizing an education camp as part of yesterday's professional development. Approximately 140 learning sessions were available for teachers and administrators to choose from. Sessions were led by both experts from outside of the school district and from our own local experts, with many sessions being led by teachers and administrators here in the school district. Topics ranged from best practices of high-functioning PLCs to Google tips and tricks to providing ESL support for students. It was an excellent day of professional learning here in the school district. Received a fantastic note from a parent regarding an amazing elementary school teacher at Waginka, Mrs. Christy Schultz. As part of a history club that Mrs. Schultz leads, she spent the past Saturday at Monroe County Historical Museum with the student and her parent, helping the student gather information for her project on the Bridge School, the first public school in Michigan back when it was just a territory. The parent described the day as a memory her daughter will always cherish. Thank you, Mrs. Schultz, for all that you do. Speaking of individuals that provide me with memories that I will always cherish, January is School Board Member Appreciation Month. Serving on the Board of Education is not easy. It includes countless personal hours in meetings, school functions, all in preparation for the decisions that they make. The Woodhaven-Brownstown School District Board of Education has developed policies and make tough decisions that shape the future of education for our children, and they are doing so in such a way that we can all be excited and proud to be a part of, as evidenced by bid pack number 5 approval this evening. So, collectively, this Board of Education has a total of 46 years of board service, and they don't look a day over 20.
It's mostly Nikki.
As a community, we are very fortunate to have a Board of Education that is committed to providing the best educational experience possible for all students. In recognition of your service, we have small tokens of appreciation for you. We have notepads that were personalized by our graphic arts students over at Woodhaven High School. We got a nice little note of thanks and jokes from our Warrior Brew Crew for each of the board members. A small token of appreciation and thanks, a note of thanks on behalf of myself. And then before you leave this evening, we dug up some old T-shirts that we have in the back. So if you want to go back and find the right one that fits for you, that would be great. Thank you for all that you do.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to item number 10 is hearing of the public. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to address the board on topics that are not on the agenda, now would be the time. Ms. Avery, do we have any comment cards? Okay, thank you. Board member comments.
I have a couple.
Wonderful.
One, welcome
Yes.
to Valerie and Carrie. Glad to have you as part of the team. And thank you very much to your board office staff, Mr. Greathead. I think there's a couple of us that really ask a lot of questions and require a lot of work to stay up with us. So Mr. Satterfield, I asked him a question last month, and it took a lot of research and a lot of explaining to me to get me to understand, so I appreciate that, but each of you do that. Today, Mr. Picano and I had a conversation. This is what I kind of wanted to bring up. Not something to necessarily put on the agenda, but I would like to have a discussion that I think he's already begun about our pay to participate. How much we charge, the difference between middle school, which is only a third of the time, the third of the season of high school, but we charge the same amount. So maybe taking a look at how much we charge for those different, where the, you know, why we charge that particular amount, maybe what some other schools in the area are doing, to just try and be sure that we're having best practice. So not anything that needs to happen soon. I just, obviously, it'd probably be something for next year. Just, I wanted to start the discussion, so I called Mr. Picano. It sounds like he's already started it a little bit with Mr. Greathead in some different ways. So I just wanted to keep the conversation going.
So can we take a look, Mark, at the schedule and see which committee of the whole that makes the most sense to bring into as the discussion? Does that make sense?
Could certainly do that, but I ultimately think if any change to current practice were to take place, it would come through, because the pay to participate funds all support the general fund, so it would naturally come out of the budgeting process. And so, yeah.
So I'm part of the finance committee of the whole
Yeah, yes.
discussion.
And it may not end up changing anything. I just think a parent brought to my attention, it's funny, I said, it never occurred to me, I've sent 3 kids through middle school sports, and I never noticed that you're paying the same amount for less of a season. And there may be a really good reason we do that. I just wanted to take a look at it and see why and if that's best practice.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? I have a couple. Same thing. I want to welcome our new board members. It's really exciting. This past Saturday, the art games for basketball were at the high school. That was really fun. I got to stop in and see some of that. I had core reading today. I always love getting in the classroom. I couldn't be a teacher by trade, but it's fun for a half an hour once a month. And then the Unified Team has their first jamboree that Woodhaven High School is hosting this Saturday from 10 to 2. So I think it's 6 different districts that are going to be there. It's from 10 to 2, free entry. So come by and see the Unified Teams playing basketball. And then today I attended a lunch and learn put on by MASB. It was just virtual at noon. And it was really dedicated to the fact that there are a lot of newly elected board members. So it was around teamwork and ensuring that onboarding is done well and that we have roles and responsibilities laid out and board operating procedures. So that was really nice to hear, because we've done a lot of work on that front in the last year, and we've got roles and responsibilities coming as a training session to the board here soon. And then they also highlighted the new Michigan Constitution requirement posting, which we're compliant with that frame in the back of the room there. So that was nice to know we were compliant there. And that is about it. But it was a good session. It was an hour. I think there were like 80 or 85 board members and superintendents on. It's just kind of a come, listen, talk, conversation, open forum. I've never been to one before, so I was glad I was able to go to that. So
Just want to make thank you. I just want to make an announcement. I think we've talked about this already, and Mark, you maybe we're going to say this, but we are doing our Education Foundation dinner this year. It's April 20th. It will be at Crystal Gardens. Ticket cost remains the same as it always has been, and donations of any sort are appreciated. That's it.
where can we get tickets?
I don't think we've distributed them yet.
No.
We
Okay.
can start to
make
advertise
it.
that.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay.
It's
Very cool.
exciting.
Mark your calendars.
April 20th.
It's always a good time. Anybody else? All right, if nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:19 p.m. Date and time of our next meeting is Tuesday, February 14th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. here at the administration office. Thank you, everyone.
January 30th.
Thank you.